Tar Heel basketball player Jonathan Holmes is now an assistant coach at Charleston. How's the year looking for the Cougars? And what are Jonathan's best memories as a Tar Heel? Let's find out.
Hey, this is Jesse Holland, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast. I'm your host, Isaac Schade, and this episode is brought to you by Kalshi. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use code LOCKEDON to get $10 when you trade 10. Welcome into part 2 of my conversation with Tar Heel player, now assistant coach at Charleston, Jonathan Holmes. If you missed part 1, I'm going to link it up in the corner and you can go catch it there, where we talked about Coach Jonathan's time at Miami of Ohio last year, all the special run they had through that undefeated regular season, and his move to Charleston. Coming up now on the show, we're going to carry on that conversation, look ahead to Charleston's season, and then the last 2 segments will all be about memories of his time as a Tar Heel playing for both Coach Guthridge and Coach Doherty. Don't miss out on any of that and how that has set Coach Jonathan up for who he is and what he's doing now. Great stuff. Also, again, huge thanks to our guy, Coach Rob, for setting up this conversation. He is always a connector. That's what he's always doing. Let's get it. So the Cougars, coming off a 21-11 season, finished second in the CAA, which I still cannot call it the Coastal Athlete. That's like not in my vernacular yet. I have to stop and think about it. Unfortunately, lost to Towson in the first game of the CAA tournament. But just projecting ahead, I know we've already got some of the schedule up and rolling here for the non-con. What are you looking ahead to this season? How are you feeling about where the Cougars are at?
Yeah, it's been a really busy spring and summer for us. You know, again, and I think like the majority of college basketball is going through this right now. It's not just because of a job change or new staff. It's just, you know, you're putting together a new roster almost every spring. You know, again, regardless of the situation, whether you're replacing 3 guys or 11 guys, you know, I think everybody's going through this to a certain degree. But yeah, it was an incredibly busy spring and summer. I think we have 11 or 12 new guys now. And so you spend, you know, when I got here, and I guess it was mid or late April, you jump right into the recruiting process of putting a team together. And, you know, the rest of the staff was already here in place, you know, for the most part. And so I was able, they had already kind of hit the ground running, you know, putting the roster together. So, you know, I was able to jump in and kind of, like I said, just, you know, kind of get around these guys, because Coach Groce brought a few guys from Akron. Right. And so those guys have been together and had a ton of success for many years. And so I appreciate how they have, you know, welcomed me into the fold here, and especially because I was on the opposite sideline for the past 4 years. And so, they're not looking at me as the Miami guy. It's like we're all now, it's all one Charleston. And, you know, so I'm appreciative of that fact. But, the first big thing is putting the roster together and kind of getting the pieces. And it's not, I think the biggest thing when it comes to roster construction, Isaac, it can't just be a talent grab. It's got to be, because you see a lot of teams that have a ton of talent that don't ever, you know, reach a certain level of potential, I guess. I think at the end of the day, it's like putting the puzzle together. You got to get all the pieces and, you know, figure out, can this guy complement this guy? Do we have enough shooting? Do we have enough size? Are we versatile enough? Especially, you know, stylistically, you know, how we play. I mean, if you've watched Akron before, I mean, I think they were 7th in the country last year in scoring. So play really fast, shoot a lot of threes, very, very similar to what we did at Miami. And so again, that's kind of how you start this thing. You're putting the roster together and making sure all the pieces fit. You know, culture is incredibly important. I think sometimes it's like, you know, we're not going to sacrifice fit just to go get somebody who's talented or some guy that averaged X number of points at whatever school. We got to make sure that the fit is there for Charleston. You know, basketball wise, people, academically, the whole thing's got to fit. And, you know, again, I think what I learned from one of the many things I learned in my time at Miami was that, you know, you can't sacrifice fit. If you sacrifice fit, you're setting yourself up. And that's obviously something we're doing here, and you know what Coach Groce has done throughout his career, you know, whether it's been at Illinois, Ohio, Akron, all the places that he's been as a head coach, he's done that at a really high level. So, put the roster together, and then, we jumped into 8 weeks of summer training. And, so we had our guys here, a brand new team. We're new, they're new. So there's a lot of teaching, that goes into the summer because everything's new. The drills are new. The terminology's new. It's not just hey, we're new as people. The basketball side of things is brand new. And so, we spent a lot of time this summer kind of getting in place, just our identity on both sides of the ball. Hey, this is how we're going to play offensively. This is what we do defensively. But obviously in the summertime, because I do think offense takes longer to get good at. Just because of that chemistry piece and getting everybody on the same page. And we play a very conceptual style of basketball to where it's not just, you're not coming down and running set play 1, set play 2, set play 1A, set play 2A. Like it's very conceptual and yeah, exactly. And so it takes longer to get good at. And so we have to spend the majority of our summer kind of getting that offensive side of the ball, moving in the right direction while at the same time still, working on our defense. So yeah, it's been busy. It's been great. Like I said, it's been a very, very smooth transition for me and for us as a family. And it's we're excited about the season. Like I said, our guys come back this weekend, class starts on Monday, and then we're back rolling again. So it's exciting.
And that's part of what makes watching Akron basketball the last couple of years, or, with what you've done at Miami so much fun, is it's not just this robotic set, but it's like, let's be basketball players, but work within systems and concepts. And so that's going to make Charleston a lot of fun to watch. And I can't wait to see it. One more question here before we move on, Jonathan, is, you talked earlier about, hey, I didn't get that head coaching job. And so we, kept on looking and doing stuff. Is that something you think about at some point in your career? Are you enjoying sitting in the assistant role, or would you at some point like to be a head coach at a school?
Yeah, I mean, I think my desire is to one day, be a head coach. But I don't allow myself, Isaac, to get overly consumed by it, especially because I think that would, detract or, from where I'm at. I think my biggest thing everywhere that I've ever been, at the NAI level, Division II, William and Mary, Elon, obviously Miami, all these different places. I've just tried to be the best assistant coach that I can be. And again, I know this sounds really cliche, but I think it's true, just kind of being where my feet are. Because again, I think if you're not, you're going to miss out on so much. Again, I've been fortunate to, like I said, be a part of a lot of really good teams, some great teams, some championship teams. And if you're always looking at what's next, you're going to miss the here and now. And so I've just tried to always be super present. But at the same time, preparing myself that, if an opportunity ever does present itself, that I'll be ready for that. But, at the meantime, my focus is making, how can I make Charleston, one of the best programs in the country, one of the best teams in the country. And that was my focus when I was at Miami and every place that I've been. Because then I just firmly believe everything else will take care of itself in that vein. But yeah, again, like I said, I think, I'm a coach's kid. My dad is starting, gosh, Isaac, this is year 57 for my dad as a high school coach. Yeah. So I've grown up a coach's kid. Coaching has been in my blood since I was born. My father dribbled a basketball out of the delivery room to let the rest of the family know that he had his point guard, I guess. I don't know. I mean, so I've heard different versions of that story for a long time now. But again, for me, like I said, I've been around coaching my entire life. And again, I think I feel very fortunate to do what I do and to have been at the places that I've been at. And I just want to keep learning and growing and developing my skill set and hopefully, be the best possible coach I can be for these guys.
What a healthy approach. I love that. Be where you are, but always be working, because you never know what's coming. And whether that's in coaching or other occupation or just life, I like what a great approach that we could take forward with us. So thank you. Well, look, we can't have a Tar Heel here on Locked On Tar Heels and not talk Carolina memories. So that's exactly what we're going to do to wrap our conversation coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Indeed. When workplace chaos hits and you need the right hire, Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps connect employers with candidates who match specific needs like skills, certifications, and location, so that less time gets spent searching and more time gets spent finding the right fit. People are finding quality hires on Indeed right now. In fact, in the minute that I'm talking to you, companies just like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed according to their worldwide data. So whether it's deadlines piling up or too much on somebody's plate or trying to scale something quickly, the right person can completely change how a team operates. That's why getting in front of qualified candidates matters. Spend less time searching, more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, but more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, that's a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of our show are going to get a $75 sponsored job credit to help your job get that premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. So head there right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On Tar Heels. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? That's a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. All right, let's go all the way back. We've been talking about Jonathan's coaching career, but we got to go back to teenager and early 20s Jonathan Holmes and talk his Carolina career, where he started as a freshman in the 99-2000 season. Obviously, that's fun to talk about. Coach Guthridge's last year, that surprise Final Four run, some frustrating, questionable foul trouble for Ed Cota in that game, but whatever. I'm not bitter about it. I'm sure you're not either.
Yeah.
But before we get to there, Jonathan, I got to ask you, how did you on earth escape Bloomington, Indiana, and not go to IU? Same as Sean May a couple years later.
No, it's a great question. Like I said, I grew up in Bloomington and played for my dad, who, as I mentioned earlier, is going on year 57, I believe, as a head varsity coach. So, grew up playing for my dad, and I'll be honest though, like as I was, as my recruiting process was unfolding, it kind of like everybody probably that's been through the process, there were a lot of twists and turns, along the way, and I was kind of recruited, coast to coast, from the high end academic schools like the Stanfords and Northwesterns, and obviously Carolina as well eventually. But my recruitment early on was mainly the Midwest and high academics out west and stuff like that. And then, the first, one of the first schools in the Southeast to get involved was Clemson. And, this was part of my recruiting story. Like I played up a year. So like in AAU, I should have been playing 16U, but I played 17U. So a lot of my early interest from a recruiting perspective was a little bit of me playing up and having some success, playing against guys that were a year older than me. And I would say probably the pinnacle for me was my junior spring, and kind of leading into that summer with the Nike All-American camp in Indianapolis, and had a couple really good showings. And so my recruitment was, like I said, across the board. But I'd really developed a rapport and relationship with Coach Barnes and Coach Schade at Clemson. But I was closest with Coach Fogler at Eddie Fogler at South Carolina. And again, a lot of this is tied together. As you can see, the basketball world is a small one. And I talked about having family in Columbia. And so my aunt and Coach Fogler's wife, Robin, have been best friends for like 30 plus years. And so a lot of my recruitment with South Carolina started via that friendship between, Robin Fogler and my aunt in Columbia. And so, like I said, my recruiting process was all over the board. And I think in my class in particular, Carolina did not recruit a point guard until late. And, because they obviously had Ed Cota and had Ronald Curry, who was just, who was obviously, doing the dual sport thing, right, and playing football. And I think they got to the end of that recruiting cycle and realized maybe that, okay, with Ronald playing football, Ed's going to be a senior. There weren't a ton of guards on the roster. Obviously, Joe Forte and I, ended up coming in together. But I think recruiting a point guard in my class was a little bit of an afterthought for them, until later in the process. So, Carolina didn't get involved with me until later, until my process was, pretty far along, to be honest. But I had always grown up and been in love with ACC basketball. I grew up watching when I was a kid, watching those, the Carolina teams of the late 80s, early 90s. I just had always had a love for the ACC style of play, the coaches, whatever it may be. And so when Carolina got involved, it was like at first I was just, it was that first phone call. I remember when Coach got called and you kind of like pinch yourself like, okay, is this like really North Carolina, and as soon as I went down and took an unofficial visit and obviously fell in love with the place. And in my mind, I was waiting on Carolina. If they ultimately wanted me, that's where I was going to go, just because I fell in love with Chapel Hill and Coach Guthridge, Coach Ford, Coach Hanners, Coach Sully. I loved everything about Chapel Hill and the opportunity to be at Carolina and the way they made me feel when I came on the visit. You could tell that Carolina family thing was very, very real. They barely knew me. The players didn't know me at all, but they made me feel like, I was already a part of the family when I took my first visit there. And so, like I said, combined with, my desire, my mom and dad still live basically 5 minutes from Assembly Hall in Bloomington.
Oh, wow.
And so, so I grew up like, being on IU's campus, and again, nothing, negative towards IU at all. I had just always wanted to go experience something else and something different.
Yeah.
Coach Knight did a great job recruiting me when I was in high school and had a great relationship with my dad. And, but I'd always wanted to get away and do something different and experience something new. And so again, that's kind of like I said, when Carolina eventually came into the picture, in my junior, my junior summer, it was kind of like the timing of everything just fit perfectly. I think, like I said, they realized maybe they needed another point guard, and I guess, like I said, the timing of everything worked out. But like I said, it was an easy. Like I said, when I first set foot, in Chapel Hill and going to the Dean Dome and getting to meet everybody, I was kind of like, okay, I'm good. If they want me, I'm coming. So. It was, like I said, my recruiting story was kind of all over the map, and we again took a lot of visits, got to meet a lot of great coaches and guys that I'm still in close contact with today. But it was a neat process to walk through, like with my dad, being a coach's kid, and he had been through the process with a lot of his former players, but going through it as father and son and as a family was really cool.
And you talk about that first phone call from Coach Guthridge, and it's like, oh my goodness. And I think we spend so much time in Carolina circles talking about the man, Dean Smith and Roy Williams, and deservedly and understandably so. But what a cool moment then for us today, Jonathan, to be able to shine some love on the two coaches in between, both of whom you played for, both Coach Gutt and Coach Doherty. And so just for people that maybe missed those couple years of Coach Guthridge, or who didn't understand what a critical part of the Dean Smith era he was, would you just share some insight into Coach Gutt?
Yeah, a great man, first of all, great man, tremendous coach. Obviously I think the way he, coached and ran the program, again, I think he'd been an assistant, and you can fact check me on this. I want to say maybe 31 years with Coach Smith, or something along those lines, for a long time. And so, the Carolina way was very much in place, with Coach Guthridge, but he was great, smart, witty. Again, anybody that knows that knew Coach Guthridge would tell you how funny he is and was, and just his one-liners, his sense of humor, and again, he made me feel a part of things, right away. And I think he and I, had a good bond, like again right away, because it was funny because he was probably a creature of habit as well, like I guess most coaches are. He would always call. So back then we had all these rules where, NCAA, you could only call once a week or whatever the exact rule was. It's been so many years now, and obviously all that stuff's out the window. But he would always call at the exact time every Monday night. And so it's like I knew, like, because again, nobody had cell phones, and so I was, you had to be waiting by the phone at whatever 8:05 p.m. every Monday night because Coach Guthridge is going to call, and and talk. So he and I formed a great relationship, and I obviously got really close with Pat Sullivan and Coach Ford and the whole staff. But it was honestly my freshman year, because it was the same year, unfortunately Ronald got hurt that football season.
Right.
And so I didn't know going in, how much I was going to play, if at all, especially as a freshman at Carolina. But I had an opportunity my first year to get some great experience. I mean, I ended up, I started a game at Georgia Tech my freshman year. I ended up having a couple pretty good games in conference and really built a lot of confidence for me, learning from Ed Cota, who to me is one of the best point guards to ever play the game. Yeah. The way Ed kind of took me under his wing my freshman year and really helped put me in a position to where when I was in there for 30 seconds or 2 minutes or whatever it was, that I was able to kind of hold the fort down and not mess up too much, when I was out there. But like I said, my freshman year was incredible. Like I said, I got some experience playing in games. Obviously, we made the Final Four run to Indianapolis, which was kind of, like I said, we came in, I think we were the 8th seed or maybe a 8, and beat Missouri in the opening round and upset Stanford, and then had the 2 games, Tulsa and Tennessee, I think, in the round of 16 and Elite 8, and then Florida in the Final Four. But for me, it was awesome because, again, I wasn't playing very much, but at the same time, the Final Four being in Indianapolis, walking out, I'll never forget that moment, walking out for the open practice. And, you walk out and there's, let's just say, 40,000 people in the RCA Dome, because I grew up going to the Indiana State Finals in that venue, so it's like you're living out those moments that you dreamt about as a little kid. And like I said, even though I got in for a very short stint and got my shot blocked into about the 50th row by Donnell Harvey, I to this day, you got to understand, this is kind of a part of my deal, because I've heard about this block shot for what is it now, 25 plus years. And I'm like, man, I was in the game for a very, very short amount of time. And that's the one that had to make one shining moment, like that one clip, So, but it was really cool for me and for my family to be, to have the Final Four be in Indianapolis, and just to be a part of it was remarkable.
What a special and integral part of Carolina basketball Coach Guthridge was, and that was Jonathan's freshman year. But his sophomore through senior year, they carried on. Brand new coach Matt Doherty. That first year was so strong. And while the Tar Heels struggled in Jonathan's junior and senior years, he learned some valuable lessons that have set him up for who he is today. We'll talk about that in just a second. Right after I tell you about Kalshi. Look, before the season even kicks off, everyone's making predictions. Who wins the division? Who makes the playoffs? Who's lifting that trophy at season's end? Well, on Kalshi, America's #1 prediction market platform, you can trade those predictions in a live market. At Kalshi, for example, they've already got win predictions for Carolina basketball this season. You just choose yes or no on several different options for the win totals: 18 plus wins, 15 plus wins, 21, and so on. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of that position, trade the draft pick, the game, and more on Kalshi. Download the app and use code LOCKEDON to get up to $500 in bonus credits when you trade 25. KALSHI Kalshi. Trade on anything. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Kalshi products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory. This episode is also brought to you by our friends at Odoo. Look, running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of different systems that were never actually designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, but somehow none of them actually even talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. It's an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works together in one place. That helps your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of managing software. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone working toward the same goal. And that's true in sports, just like it is in business. One thing that really stands out is how organizations like the Tar Heels are working to get everyone pulling in the same direction. For example, Coach Michael Malone is coming in, setting new culture, new chemistry, trying to get these new Tar Heels to be ballers. Not just one great player, not just one great coach, all the players, all the staff, all the support staff trying to make it successful. Great organizations win because operations matter, and that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. Once again, that's odoo.com/lockedon. Your sophomore through senior seasons was when Coach Doherty came in. Obviously, Coach Williams wasn't ready to leave Kansas and come back yet. We know he came back eventually for that season right after your senior year. And like, I know, especially your junior and senior years, it was a rough couple of years in terms of success on the floor. But what a foundational and formational time was that for you, Jonathan?
Very, very. I mean, my sophomore year, we were terrific. You know, it's like, if you look, I think there was a stretch, and again, my time will probably be off, but maybe, I don't know, 12, 13 weeks, we were number one in the country or whatever it was, from maybe December to all the way until the end of February. So maybe, I don't know if my math is mapping.
I'm looking at the schedule. There was that Clemson loss on February 8th. It's like y'all lost 3 of the last 5 in the regular season. And I think that was where that changed.
I think we won 19 or 20 games in a row. And if I'm not mistaken, Coach Doherty was National Coach of the Year that year. And you know, so my sophomore year was tremendous. I mean, we had a terrific team, and unfortunately, you know, didn't finish strong that year. Ended up, you know, I think we lost to Penn State in the second round. But like you said, from a foundational aspect for me, for what I'm doing now as a coach, I learned more in those 3 years, just you know, sometimes sitting there watching. And you know, quick story, in between my junior and senior year, both Coach Wojcik and Coach Doherty approached me about you know, kind of like being involved in coaching meetings and kind of seeing what goes on. Yeah, so it was kind of my first introduction into the coaching profession. Was those guys saw something in me from a coaching perspective, and wanted me to say, hey, you know, after practice, would love for you to stick around and be a part of meetings or listen to, you know, because again, I think they obviously, me as a coach's kid, as a point guard, you know, I think that they in their mind were kind of helping prepare me for that next phase of life, you know, giving me that introduction into the coaching business, coaching profession. So again, that was when the coaching aspect for me really started to take hold. You know, over those last 2 or 3 years at Carolina. And listen, like my senior year, you know, Raymond was a freshman, Rashad, Sean, you know, we had a great group, and we started off, I want to say we were 5-0, won the preseason NIT. And then we came back to New York, and Sean May breaks his foot against Iona, I believe. And again, like we were rolling. We were young, but we were uber talented. And, you know, again, like I said, my senior year was pretty cool, because I got a chance to get back on the court and play some more than I had, you know, my previous 2 years. And again, I played behind Ed Cota. I played behind Raymond Felton. So listen, I'm also a realist too. Like, I know, I tell this story a lot. There was one time we were doing a drill in the fall of my senior year, and, you know, coach was like, hey, I need you got to turn Raymond twice before half court. And I said, well, I know that's probably, I know what the pecking order is going to be this year. But at the same time, you know, I think for me, just the lessons that I learned throughout my 4 years at Carolina, just what I absorbed being around great coaches, great people, great basketball, and Coach Smith as well. I mean, Coach Smith was a huge part of helping me get my first opportunities in Europe. Wow. And again, I think for, you know, everybody that wonders about the whole Carolina family thing, it is so real. And I think it's, having lived it and been a part of it, like Coach Smith made me feel like I meant as much to him as Vince Carter did. You know, whether that was the case or not, that's the way, when you were in his presence, he made you feel. And I've tried to you know, take that into my coaching career, you know, just in again, relationship driven and focused, and doing my best to help these guys all have a great experience, you know, as college athletes. And but yeah, like I said, learned a lot, grew a lot as a person, as a player. And it definitely, you know, my you know, time at Carolina is probably, you're not going to look back on it and it be characterized by scoring a lot of points or you're having a ton of on-court success individually. But I think what it did was prepare me to be a coach. And so I look back on that, like I said, with incredibly fond memories and relationships and teammates that I'm still in touch with, like group chats with Brendan Haywood and Michael Brooker and Brian Bursticker and guys that, we were super close with. And, when I was in college and to this day, we still keep in great touch.
Great stories, great memories. I'm just so thankful for you opening those chapters of your life, both as college student Jonathan and now coach Jonathan. It's great to go on the journey with you. And man, excited for Charleston this year and how the Cougars are going to do. Thankfully, I don't believe Carolina and Charleston are playing, so we can root for you all season. That awesome. Things will go well. And that'll be
hopefully, at some point we'll be able to get, we can maybe get a game with the Tar Heels and obviously just, with Matt Roberts' connection there and mine and hopefully we can get a series up and going, because I know they have played, here in recent years.
Yes.
So
and
maybe we can get that going again.
There was, I think it was Coach Williams last year. The Heels hosted Charleston to start the season, if I remember correctly, something of that nature, and then played at Charleston. I think Coach Davis's first year.
Correct.
I think it was
but maybe a 2-for-1 type of deal.
I think that's what I was gonna say. I don't think it was home and home. I think it was 2-for-1. Yeah, man,
2-for-1. Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah,
love that stuff. All right, brother. Well, we are rooting for you. Excited for you in this next chapter.
Thank you.
So grateful for your time. Everybody, make sure you go check out some Cougars games this year. Spot Coach Jonathan on the sideline, and that'll be a lot of fun. Thank you so much. If you haven't subscribed to the show, go do it down in the corner on YouTube. If you haven't started downloading the audio version of Locked on Tar Heels, we'd be honored if you would do that as well. If you want to join our Locked on Tar Heels Discord, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Tar Heel fans hanging out, talking every day. That link's down in the show notes as well. Let's get out of here the same way we always do. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again soon, but until then, peace.